Hello, hello, wherever you are. As you're starting to listen to this, there's a reason you clicked on it. And before we dive in, I just want to invite you to take a breath if you'd like, and just take a moment to connect with your surroundings wherever you are, whether you're in motion or you're still. Just connect with where your body is in space in relation to your surroundings, anything that catches your attention with your eyes or your ears, perhaps a scent or a taste in your mouth, feeling your body under the surface, over the surface beneath you, whether you're standing, walking, sitting, lying down, flying, if that's something you do. This episode is inspired by a video I watched yesterday. It was produced by Jubilee and Surround. It was debate style. So it was titled Jillian Michaels, who is a fitness celebrity, so to speak, versus body positivity. So it was Jillian making these claims, and then a circle of people related who had interests or who had connections with body positivity in a circle, and they would take turns debating with Jillian Michaels on certain topics. And it was pretty eye-opening, more than the debate itself, which sometimes made my head swirl because I was like, what's going on here? The comments were a little more disheartening, and just representing how much is misunderstood about health at every size, BMI, intuitive eating, obesity, whereas some people prefer the O word. They don't even like to use it because they consider it a slur. So some podcasts, Christy Harrison, the Body Trust podcast, you'll notice that they don't even use the word obesity for different reasons I'm not going to get into. But I just want to share some thoughts and maybe clarify for you some of these topics and give you some of my own personal conclusions and helpful framing, because it can be so confusing, and there's a lot of history, and I've spent so much time in my life researching, reading books, learning about these topics, because of course this is really near and dear to my heart, not just personally but for people I work with. I know that what I say has an impact, whether it's small or big, and I want to be very careful to not further misinformation or to harm anyone. And while saying that, I also know that I'm a human, and I know that even on this podcast, there's been a lot of things that I've said that now I wouldn't necessarily agree with. So I'm constantly evolving and learning. And most of all, I want to say that take my own words with a grain of salt. I'm not a superhuman who's perfect and knows everything. Trust yourself, do research yourself from different perspectives. Uh, that's going to be the most helpful thing for you, and coming back to your body, which I'm going to talk about at the end. But never am I this know all, be all person. And I hope I never become in that role where people just take whatever I say as truth. I always want to encourage my clients and my listeners, my audience, the people I interact with, you, my friends, to, fact check me even, or you might draw different conclusions with the facts. And in a way, everything is made up, and I believe that we can choose beliefs and ideas that are helpful and supportive to us and to others. So with that disclaimer, I want to get into a little bit of what these terms are. You might have heard them before, and then just a little bit of a history and kind of go into some philosophical ideas about what it all means for us today and what you can do for yourself. So, first of all, body positivity, I'm not going to go all into it, but it started as a movement of largely women and women of color who were feeling discriminated, queer people as well who were feeling discriminated, and they just wanted rights for their body as they were. And so it was a pretty niche movement that grew, and a lot of people now sneer at body positivity because it's kind of like you think of Dove commercials with people in different skin colors and body types. And this promotion of just love your body, which can be kind of a mandate that feels like it's coming from the clouds, given the world that we live in and a lot of people's experiences and histories with their bodies of feeling a lot of self-hatred or criticism of their body. Feeling like you're told to love your body can feel as elusive and undoable as losing weight on a diet and keeping it off. And I also want to say that in this talk, as in other people who debate things, and I want to share that I grew up in a really religious home, and I do not I do not hold the same beliefs that I did when I was young. It was the only thing that I knew. It was the world I grew up in until my early 20s. And so I can understand how staunchly you can believe something and how it usually comes from a place of care. Like you're doing what you know is best based on what you know. And so when I was younger, what was best was for me, for the people around me, was to tell them that unless they, accepted Jesus as their savior, that they were going to go to hell. And I did that from a place of genuine care and fear. But it was all I knew. And I've done so much undoing and shifting in my belief systems, and it can be scary and it's hard. It's not easy. And now I know, of course, I would never tell someone the same thing. So just keeping in mind that we're all doing the best that we can with what we know, and not everyone has genuinely kind intentions, but a lot of us are just trying to do our best with the information that we know. And so what is more important, I believe, is having an open mind and being willing to see things from other perspectives, being willing to be quote unquote wrong, and being willing to find a deeper truth. And I know that my queerness saved me, and my openness saved me from staying in that world that would be restrictive for me. And I'm very grateful to myself and proud of myself for where I've come from. So just keeping that in mind. A lot of what they talked about in this talk was HAES, health at every size. And this is a tenet that a lot of my colleagues and I myself allude to, because it does have amazing principles, like healthcare is a human right for all people of all sizes. And care is best when there's no anti-fat bias. And health is socio-political. It's a construct. And I'm reading this from their website. Well-being, care, and healing are resources that are both collective and deeply personal. And if you search up HAES, you can go to their site and see what their principles are. And I would find it hard to believe if you didn't find at least one of these principles healthy and positive. It's a lot around anti-fat bias and getting medical care that everyone deserves, informed consent, which is so important, compassionate care, bodily autonomy, all these things. So the tenets are positive, but a lot of people take it farther and think that, oh, this is just an excuse for being in a bigger body or holding fat in your body. And like I said, Jillian Michaels believes very strongly, and as do many other people, that, and what is ingrained in our society is that fat is bad. And yes, I'm not saying that you are healthy if you have a lot of markers that are unhealthy in a bigger body, but we can also have health issues at any size. So, and there are studies that show that there's no one disease that is directly correlated with being in a bigger body. And so there's a lot of information out there. And I can't say one thing is right or one thing is wrong. What I do know is that we all deserve care and compassion, and we all are worthy in our bodies, no matter what size we are, and our bodies are not something to fix. Another thing that gets a lot of attention and a lot of what we base our health on is the BMI. And I've mentioned this in the podcasts before. I've done a lot of research around these issues through books and articles, but I do want to clear the air about the BMI. So much of our health hinges on, what is your healthy BMI? I remember when I was in my eating disorder, I would use the BMI calculator and put my weight and put my height in, and I would just want the number to be so low. And I was like, oh, it's not low enough. Or I wanted to be below normal because I felt like that meant I was skinny enough or thin enough. So I know how much power we can give these numbers. And I just kind of want to give you some insight. Again, you can do what you want with it. You can make your own conclusions. But in the 1800s, there was a guy named Adolphe Quetelet, and he was an anthropologist, and he wanted to find the markers for the quote average man, l'homme moyen, en français, or in French. And so he took a small population of white men and a small population of white men in Europe, and he made this ratio: weight in kilograms over height in meters. And when you divide weight by height, you get a certain number. And that was the BMI. And he was trying to find like the perfect man. Like, what does the average perfect man, what are the numbers? So it had nothing to do with health. It had nothing to do with people beyond white European men at the time in 1800s. And then later on, this guy in the 1970s, Ansel Keys, he coined the term BMI, and he used it for comparing weight levels in population. So he took this formula that was used to find what the average man, his height and his weight, and then he used that formula for weight, not anything to do with women or people of different ethnicities and different races. It was all based on white men. Surprise. And then in the 1990s, the World Health Organization, they wanted a way to standardize health insurance claims and longevity claims. So like, hey, this guy did this for the obesity. Let's use this formula. So the World Health Organization and the NIH, they started to use it as a standard to classify body weight in people. So really it's like taking some random numbers and applying it to something and saying that it's true and then it's legitimate. And this is a part of why people don't like the word obesity and they use the O word because it's it's based on this bogus BMI. And it was never meant to measure health. It did not include people of different races and genders and ages. It was just kind of adopted, like, hey, let's just use this BMI, and we consider it to be truth. We consider it to be, oh, I have a BMI, so this means this. But if you look at athletes, a lot of Olympic athletes, even, they're considered obese or very morbidly obese because of their BMI. And it just does not account for diversity. And it's not even, was not even intended for health purposes. So there's the BMI basher. Another thing that comes up is intuitive eating. And a lot of people have this idea that, oh, if I just eat intuitively, I'll just eat everything. And in my own experience, sometimes that can be helpful when you've been under eating. Your body is literally starving, and that's what happened to me. But getting support, really, if you are in the throes of an eating disorder, getting support is like the best thing that you can do for yourself at whatever level you have access to, even if it's just books and learning and researching. Because working with a dietitian who's informed with HAES and intuitive eating can help. And often in the beginning stages of recovery with an eating disorder or even long-term dieting, intuitive eating is not the first step that you might take because it does require reconnecting with your body. But if you look at the principles of intuitive eating, it's about rejecting diet culture, honoring your hunger, making peace with food, uh, feeling your fullness and satisfaction, coping with your emotions in kind ways, respecting your body, honoring your health. So all of these things are positive, kind, compassionate tenets. But I know that for me, when I was really looking for answers and noticing how tight my rules were with food, and I really wanted to find intuitive eating, I read it and it just felt kind of like the idea of being present, or meditating. It just felt really elusive and a little bit confusing. And I, after years of relying on rules and only rules for how I ate, it was a long shoot. But ultimately, I have come to a place where I do eat more intuitively, and it's not like a perfect, you do it right or you do it wrong. It's the principles that guide you, the values that guide you in your eating choices. So, uh, just want to make that clear about context being important for intuitive eating. And when we're babies, we're intuitive eaters, and we get messages from diet culture, from our parents, from peers about how we should eat, and we kind of turn off our own signals. So coming back to our body is really an ultimate goal, but it's not always a clean process, as most growth is. It's not always a clean process. There's lots of ups and downs and learning, and as long as you're trying and showing up and seeking kindness for your body, I think that you're in the right direction. Another thing that this interview ended with was this idea of personal responsibility versus systems of oppression. So the argument that Jillian made was that body positivity is disempowering, and the argument she made in general was that we look at the systems of oppression and how we grow up and we blame the world, so to speak, for our issues, and so we never take personal responsibility, so it's disempowering. And then on the other side, the people were saying no, body positivity empowered me because I realized like there's body diversity and there's nothing wrong with me and I deserve care in the body that I'm in, and it motivated me to make better choices for myself. So that was the argument. And I want to touch on this to end with. This is like the part I really want to get into after giving you some definitions to hopefully clarify all these terms that get so misunderstood. It's always both and. So yes, we have personal responsibility, and I believe that we are such powerful beings, and we can always choose how we respond, our beliefs, our actions, what we choose to give attention to. Most of all, we can't always control the input, but we can choose where we put our focus. And we have so much power as individuals. And that is a tenet of the 4-H method. You are 100% worthy and powerful. So I believe and know that we have so much personal power. And we are human beings with limits in our brains, in our bodies, and we live in contexts, we live in systems, we live in societies and cultures. We don't just appear out of nowhere. We come from a lineage of our parents or grandparents. We have their DNA in our very body. So we can't just say you're on an island all alone in a bubble, in a vacuum, and take out all these other factors. We are holistic beings. And this is the other tenet of the 4-H method in happiness, the next one. We are whole and complete and worthy and powerful. And we are also holistic beings, which means that our environment affects us, our emotions affect us, our relationships affect us, how we view the world affects us. So it's a beautiful thing. It's not a barrier. It's a beautiful thing of being human on this earth. And so if we were to isolate only one, we kind of veer on the way of imbalance. And having space and being able to hold space for both of these ideas of personal responsibility and intersectionality and being human is such an important skill. And it kind of requires a little bit of like letting go of a grip of one idea and just allowing space for more. And by the way, meditation really helps with this muscle. It's like making space for everything without clinging to one thing. At least for me, that's how meditation has supported me. So in this, I'm going to go towards the systemic part, i.e. the systems of oppression that we live in. And just let me ask you this. If you were to see, and try not to be so biased or overthink it, let me just give you an example, okay? And I'm going to be pretty specific here. If you were to see a middle-aged white woman, conventionally attractive, in a thin toned body, she does yoga, she does weightlifting, she runs, she's strong, and she eats healthy. So she's got her juice in her cold pressed juice, maybe a reishi tea with with mushrooms in it, with adaptogens in it, and she eats a clean diet, and sometimes she'll eat cake and drink wine. If you see her, okay, you got this image of someone in your mind, and she's probably wearing athleisure or in a nice business suit. And then you think of someone maybe dressed in more casual clothes, a woman presenting these are both women. She might be in a bigger body. She's in a bigger body. She's not white. She has brown skin, perhaps, and she has some French fries in her hands, and she skipped breakfast. She drank a latte on her way to work with sugar and milk in it. and she's got a lot on her plate. So she's very busy. She doesn't have a lot of time for herself. If you think of these two women in your mind, I want you to think about in our society, and I'm speaking for America, who has higher status. And I'm not saying who is more valuable, I'm just saying who has more social status. And the answer is pretty obvious, right? We have an idea of equating health with status. So being healthy and fit is really a status marker. And if you think about the rich people in the world, like I just listened to a maintenance phase episode of Tim Ferriss. He did the 4 hour work week, and then he wrote this book, The 4 Hour Body. And they were making lots of jokes about how when you're so wealthy, the next thing that you have time to think about is how not to die. And he has an ultrasound machine in his house. He measures his blood like every few weeks. He takes blood tests. He has a really strict diet with so many rules. If you think about like just a generic idea of a wealthy person, you're likely going to equate some of that with how they eat well or how they don't eat too much. And then if you think about like a generic poorer person, you're going to think, oh, fast food and not taking care of themselves, they should eat more vegetables. So I just want to bring home in a clear way, not saying anyone is more worthy or more valuable. I'd much rather hang out with one person over the other personally. Just me. But how we use health and thinness as a status marker. And this is not a mistake. And I'm going to give you some history, some early history, not more recent history, but more early history. And then I'll bring it up to date. So diets are not new in our society. Diets are not new in our society. They've been going on for a long time. And with the rise of communication, global communication, we just understand more of what other people are doing. We're more aware of what's happening in the world. So in the early 1900s, the scale was used for large equipment. So just a scale of how much things weigh. And then it made debuts in carnivals. So people could, those machines that you can put 25 cents in and it's kind of like bling, bling, bling at the mall or something. And like you can find your weight and they like do the little flashing lights and they might give you your BMI or like give you like a good or a bad. That's kind of derived from where scales started. They started in America in carnivals as a way that you could pay like a little amount of money and stand on the scale and see how much you weigh. And they like made it a fun event thing to do because household scales were not a thing. And then they moved to doctors' offices when they started using weight as a measure of health. So they went to doctors' offices, and then in 1916, they were patented for household use. So the average person could step on a scale and know how much they weigh. And you might have a scale in your house. So it's been around for a little over 100 years now, just over 100 years now. Another thing that started happening in the 1900s is industrialization and machines and factories. So what did that do to clothing? Instead of people making clothing on their own in their own house, it started to be mass produced. And with that, they needed a uniformity in size. So they would use, small, medium, large, or certain numbers to just create some consistency across. And if you have ever gone shopping, you know that the sizes aren't consistent. It depends on the brand, and this brand I'm this size and this brand I'm that size. But there was like a system, so to speak, with clothing. So people could compare. Can you imagine the feeling of not knowing what another person's size is because it doesn't exist, or not knowing what your own size is because it doesn't exist? And women in high class society, there were this is like around the production of magazines specifically for women. Before, they were mostly for men. So they would have sections of popular magazines for women. Then they started producing magazines specifically for women. And in this, they would give tips about how to be a good woman. They would talk about how to use this quality of self discipline and willpower to not eat certain foods and to be thin. And this is when it started to be more popularized across the culture for women to be thin. And these are all, by the way, if we go farther back, this is a lot based on like a Christian Puritan idea of not putting like bad things in your body and eating properly and what a woman should be. So when I say eating enough for your body is the biggest fuck you to patriarchy, I mean it. Like it's rooted in history. Uh, Diets started to come out, like popular diets. There's this guy named Banting who most likely had an eating disorder, and he advised against carbs. It was like one of the first low carb diets to be popularized. This other guy, I don't remember his name, but he encouraged a lot of chewing, like chewing your food for a long time before you swallow. There's even the chew and spit out, which is an eating disorder behavior, disordered eating behavior. We consider that now, like chewing and then spitting it out because you want to taste it, but you don't want to ingest the carbs. Low calorie diets were a big thing. And celebrities really, hello, still happening today, 100 years later, celebrities really popularized diets. So in the 1920s, the flapper girl came out, this like idea of an androgynous, really thin, not very shapely, kind of flat woman who would dance a lot. And so celebrities started sharing their diets. And in the early 1900s, like grapefruit and toast and not eating a lot of butter or not eating a lot of sweets were common. And even the tapeworm pill was a diet. So you basically just ingested tapeworms. There's a famous actress at the time, Barbara Lamar. She was a flapper and she died when she was 29. She didn't sleep very much and she had drug and alcohol addictions. But she also was an extreme dieter, and she was cited as taking a tapeworm pill shortly before she passed away from tuberculosis, but definitely contributed to by her diet and her extreme dieting, like barely eating things. So it was starting to become common knowledge that this is what celebrities did. And celebrities have what? They have status. Still in our world, they do. That's why they get paid so much. They have a lot of status, and we look up to them and we admire them. And this is just our culture. They give us people to admire for whatever reasons we're not going to get into. So diets were popular. And then you fast forward, you think of the models in the 1960s and the Ziggy, the really thin. We think of how runways have impacted our ideas of body shape, and then we come to now where we have so many celebrities with obvious weight loss, and it always like makes me feel like a little when I see celebrities, and I don't want to name names, but like just losing a lot of weight, and it's obvious. And people on the red carpet being ultra thin, even for men, there's like so much pressure to have six packs and be muscular and thin, and tone and strong. So the standards are changing. This was not always the case. Before these diets and before the 1900s, curviness and more voluptuousness was prized. So we're in a system that is giving us these standards of what we should aspire to if we want to have more social status. And like I said, with the feeling secure in your body, of course, if you're going to gain approval by doing certain actions or looking a certain way, that is related to your survival, that's related to your safety, that's related to your opportunities. So of course, you'd want to conform to what society is telling you. Like it's not, there's nothing wrong with you for wanting this. You probably, all of you listening probably have some stories of seeing your mother or father or grandmother or aunt or relative or family friend dieting. Like you have that ingrained from when you were a kid. You probably have your own stories of how you dealt with food when you were a kid, or saw lots of diet things, or seeing your mom say no to seconds or no to desserts, or your dad, I don't know, working out in the gym to be buff or whatever it is. And again, this goes to gender as well. So there's a lot of overlap with our different identities, which is why I talk about intersectionality. So if you think about all this and then you say, you're blaming diet culture for being fat, so to speak, it's unfair. It's unfair, right? And then at the same time, we are the only ones who can make choices for our body ultimately, and we have to want something to change. But it's the whole premise that's really fucked up, which is you're more valuable if you're thin and healthy, and you're less valuable if you're not. And that's where I like to just take the foundation and shake it and shake it and shake it and see what falls through, because a lot of things fall through when you shake the foundation of why we believe certain things. And I'm not saying that, I'm not going to say that 500 pounds is healthy or unhealthy. Depends on lots of factors, but I'm not saying like, oh yeah, just, go eat everything and gain as much weight as you can. And I've been in that place too, where it's so confusing. It's like, so should I just like eat? Like, where do I stop? How do I know how to stop? And a lot of that was because I was looking outside to get my answers. And so I know how difficult it can be. I know how confusing this can be. But when we change the premise, the idea, and this might take a little bit of stretching, it might take a little bit of rewiring and being open to new ideas. But if we take away this premise that fat means something is wrong with you and thin means you're doing something right, which is what our society promotes. Like if you heard someone tell you, oh, you've lost weight, pretty neutral, in a neutral tone, you would probably take that as praise and say, oh, thank you. If you heard someone tell you, say, oh, you've gained weight, neutral, you'd probably take that as an insult. In Korea, people are very open about it. And, oh, sorry, just saw, like, oh, you gained weight. And sometimes that can be positive if you've been not eating as much, or if you've been sick and like, oh, sorry, just saw, or like you did well, or sorry, just saw. And that tends more to be praise, but they're very open in Korea. That's just a side note about commenting on whether you've lost weight or gained weight, and it's very offensive to people who are not from Korea. I've definitely heard both. And then, of course, in my mind, of course, I lost weight. And I talked about this in a previous episode where more recently, someone like a couple years ago, I was sick on a trip. I had stomach issues. And I did lose weight because I wasn't eating my normal food and I had like a stomach bug. So I did lose some weight, and someone said, oh, you've lost weight. And I didn't take it as praise. I was like, I've really grown a lot. I've really grown a lot. Another thing, like we associate weight gain with trauma. Oh, like, and this was a big idea that came up in this discussion with Jillian Michaels and the body positivity people. It's like, oh, you've gained weight. Something must have happened to you when you were a kid, or there's something that you're not dealing with. And then on the other hand, even in like the most, like even in evolved circles, like, the healing world and spirituality, people still equate weight loss with healing. And sometimes that is the case. And sometimes it is not. Just like weight gain, sometimes it's good to gain weight. It's a positive thing. It's healthy for you. And sometimes it's not. But to just equate one thing with another and not look at context and nuance and mental health and what's going on underneath is such a disservice. It's like kicking someone in the leg and making them trip. So we have both, and we have personal responsibility and we have a culture that we live in. And so much of this is impacted by access to resources, privilege, by how you grew up, the color of your skin, the level of education you have, intersectionality, and not to forget genetics. Genetics. Some people are naturally bigger, some people are naturally smaller. And to make one better than the other is so harmful. And I'm talking about eating disorders and disordered eating, but I do want to, share that they are complex. We're still studying the science of what causes eating disorders, and there's no conclusive one thing. It's due to a variety of factors, including personality, genetics, biology, environment. You could grow up in a really healthy home and still have an eating disorder. You can grow up in a really unhealthy home and not have an eating disorder. But like I talked about with Alexi Bonilla, she's going to be a guest on this podcast. Eating disorders really are a way of coping, and it's an easy access way of coping because we have a system in our culture that makes it easy to plug into. So if I want to feel better, I won't eat. If I do eat a lot, I feel guilty. And it's really a way of managing emotions. And we're going to talk about that later in a different episode that you can listen to, the one with Lexi Bonilla. Check it out for eating disorders. But the nuance and the thing that is somewhat difficult for us to accept, because I think it's more comfortable to have this is always this, and so I can rely on this to feel safe and not want to examine or hold space for all the intricacies and complexities. But healing doesn't mean a specific outcome for everyone. For some, like I said, healing could be weight gain. It could be eating more. It could be even eating more, quote unquote, junk food. That can be healthy for some people. And having worked with lots of clients in eating disorder recovery or who have gone through recovery, this is so important. This is so important. Do you know how much diet culture and fitness rules can take over someone's mind and body? And so many of us, even like people like me who are in this fitness trainer, personal trainer, a lot of us go into these fields because we want to perpetuate our eating disorders in a way that stays under the radar. So I'm going to help other people. And I'm not saying this is everyone out there, but it does happen. So sometimes exercising way less, even not exercising at all for a long period of time, more than you might think, is healthy. Sometimes eating vegetables is more healthy, but the idea that you always have to move towards this to be healing or to be taking care of yourself is fundamentally wrong and fundamentally harmful. And that's what I want to make so clear. So we have to be willing to challenge the ideas that we think are true, that we've held to be true, that just live in our bodies and in our brains. We have to be willing to examine them. I was, okay, so 90 Day Fiance, I shared that I really like this show. I was watching the tell-all last night with my girlfriend, and the tell-all is like the best part, guys. Like, watch the whole season just so you can watch the tell-all. Like, it's, for me, it's like, oh, we've made it to the end. All of those boring scenes were worth it. All of the exciting drama was worth it because of the tell-all. So watch the tell-alls. I was watching the tell-all, and there was this one guy, no spoilers, I was watching before the 90 days. Yeah, one of the more recent ones. And this guy makes an insult to a girl and says like, "Oh, it looks like you've gained weight." And immediately A neutral comment, like, right? It could be taken neutrally. And a comment, just a comment. You've gained weight. And her response was, no, I haven't gained weight. No, I don't think I've gained weight, because it was immediately interpreted as an insult. And it was intended as an insult from this dude. No one really liked him. And everyone else, interprets it as an insult inherently, because weight gain is bad. And just like, no matter how much you try to protect yourself from these ideas, you're going to be exposed to them. Like GLP-1 ads are everywhere. Even if you don't look at social media or watch TV, which is very unlikely, you're going to hear something like that comment in the office where you work, or a family member. Like, these things are everywhere. And then you can have rage, you can be angry, you can be upset. But I hope that you don't end there. And I hope that you can just, in my brain, I told my girlfriend, I was like, see, it's everywhere. Like, he used that as an insult. And it's not necessarily wrong to gain weight. It's not a bad thing to gain weight. But she interpreted it that way. The world interprets it that way. So kind of just like putting on this lens of practicing, oh, that's fat bias there. Or even like not speaking up when, or not laughing when people make jokes like that, or saying, oh, so what if she gained weight? That's okay. That's okay if you gained weight. And not like, it takes a lot of internalization and a lot of work to undo this, but it's so worth it, because we're going to be living in this world forever. And I really believe that change happens one person at a time. So yeah, if you want to change the world, start with yourself. Start with yourself. And yes, we need systemic changes. We need policy changes. We need big government changes. Absolutely. We need those things. But the biggest influence you can have for yourself and for others around you, if you want, you don't have to, but is to start undoing these harmful ideas yourself, and start with yourself. And that's where I want to leave you, is what do you think of all of this? What are your thoughts? How does this land for you? Maybe you've heard this information before and it's nice to get a refresher. Maybe a lot of this is new to you, and like just seeing things from a new perspective has been eye-opening. What are you going to do with it? Where are you going to let it land? You might want to let it incubate for a while. You might be like, I'm not ready to deal with this. Or you might want to like go home and do a lot of research, or listen to a book like Anti-Diet by Christy Harrison, or Fearing the Black Body by Sabrina Strings. These are really helpful books that have been eye-opening for me, but it can be overwhelming. And I'm not saying it's easy, but it's worth it. And a big part of my own recovery started with myself, but then it bled into learning these things. And so it helped me realize I'm not alone. This is a system that we live in, and I want to be a part of the change. So I do the work that I do. But I really want to encourage you to come back to you. When you are connected with your body, and not just your body, but your heart and your brain, when you take your power back from all these places with all these confusing ideas, and you kind of have this feeling of release, but being with yourself at the same time, you can take your power back. And when you take your power back, you can choose what is right for you, from listening to yourself. Again, not just your body, but your spirit, your heart. And getting support, outside support, is one of the best things that you can do for your healing. It verges on necessary, if not absolutely landing in necessary, to get support. Of course, you can do things a lot on your own, but it's so much faster. It's so much richer. It's so much safer to get support. And if you've been listening to this and you're like, Michelle, I really appreciate your perspectives, I invite you to check out the 4-H method, because this is what it's all about. It's about coming back to you, understanding the systems that are at play, but practicing being with yourself, because that's where your best answers are. That's where your best answers are. It's about building skills of kindness and trust and noticing and awareness and knowing what your own values are, knowing what your own desires and priorities are, and aligning life and your food choices, your exercise choices, the way that you choose to see your body with those values that you hold that are important to you as a person. It's not the other way around. And this is the work that we really, 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 really need to do. It's not just for people who have like a lot of quote unquote issues with food and exercise, although it is super helpful. It's also for just it's everywhere. It's the sea we live in. And the more of us that come back to ourselves and take our power back and know that no matter what, absolutely no matter what, we are inherently and wholly 100% worthy. And you are right now just listening to it. You don't have to do the 4-H method to know that. You are worthy and powerful. And coming back home to yourself, your body, your home, your health, your hero journey, not society's hero journey, not a weight gain journey, not a weight loss journey, your unique journey. I highly recommend the 4-H method to you. Come back to yourself. Come back to yourself. Come back to yourself. That is where your power is. And that is where you remember your incredible worth. And from that place, you can make aligned, helpful, compassionate, trusting decisions for your health. Not because of what society says or fitness culture or diet culture says. We go through the practice of remembering and relearning what it is to trust yourself. And I don't call it intuitive eating. I don't call it a certain exercise program. It's you and you with support from your coach and your community. Come join the 4-H method. That's my biggest invitation to you, as I say in the outro. I'd be happy to hear how this lands for you. Any ideas that sprung up, I'm sure as I re-listen to this, I'm gonna be like, oh, I could have said this, and oh, I should have added this. Oh, I could have rephrased that better. That's how I feel about every podcast episode. But thank you so much for listening. You are so loved, worthy, and powerful.